nachman, nachman, meuman, nanach, nachma, masios. So third day, on the third day, this couple again remembered, and they cried and longed, how can the third beggar be brought here who was speech impaired? Meanwhile the oldie came and said, I am here. And he fell on them and kissed them, and he also said to them as before, at first I blessed you that you will be like me, now I give you a wedding present, that you be like me. You think that I am speech impaired. I am not speech impaired at all, only the utterances of the world which are not praises to Hashem Yisburach have no wholeness, and therefore he seemed like someone speech impaired, for he was speech impaired regarding these utterances of the world that are not completion. But in truth I am not speech impaired at all. On the contrary, I am very wonderful. I am a very wonderful orator and speaker. And I can say such wonderful riddles and songs, which they call leader, that no creature in the world can be found that will not want to hear me. And in these riddles and songs that I know, there are in them all the wisdoms, and I have consensus on this from that great man called the true man of kindness, the grosse man, or the grosse man, or the emissary chesed with the yiyis term. Did rebbe of blessed memory tell it? Nanach, nachman, meuman. Then there is a whole story to this. For once upon a time, all the wise men sat, and each one boasted in his wisdom. One was boasting that he discovered with his wisdom the production of iron, and one boasted that he discovered another type of metal, and one was boasting that he discovered with his wisdom the production of silver, which is more valued, and one boasted that he discovered the production of gold, and one was boasting that he discovered tools of war, and one was boasting that he knew how to produce these metals without those things that they produce these metals from. And this one was boasting in other wisdoms, for there are several things that they discovered in the world via wisdoms. For example, salitro, raw material for producing metal. For example, salitro, raw material for producing metal, and pilver, explosive material, and the like, and each one was boasting in his wisdom. Someone there replied, I am wiser than you are, for I am wise like the day. And they did not understand there what it meant, what it meant, that he was wise like the day. And he said to them, because all your wisdoms can be put together, and they shall not last but 1 hour. Even though each and every wisdom is taken from a different day, according to the creation that was on that day. For all those wisdoms are composites, and therefore the wisdom is taken from that day that creation occurred in, that the composition is from. Despite this via wisdom, all these wisdoms of yours can be collected into 1 hour, but I am wise like an entire day. All this boasted that last wise one. I answered and said to him, i.e. this in speech impaired one, said to the wise one, mentioned like which day, i.e. like which day are you wise? He answered and said, the wise one mentioned this one, i.e. the speech impaired one is wiser than me, since he asks, like which day, but like whatever day you wish I am wise. But now one could ask, why is it that this one whoever asks, like which day, is wiser than him if he is wise like whatever day he wishes? For there is a whole story. For this true man of kindness is in truth a very great man. And I, i.e. the speech impaired one, who is telling all this, go and collect all the kindnesses of truth, and bring them to this true man of kindness. And the main way time comes to exist, for time itself is created is via the kindnesses of truth. And I go and collect all the kindnesses of truth and bring them to the true man of kindness. And there is a mountain, and on the mountain stands a stone, and from the stone goes out a spring, and everything has a heart, and also the entire world has a heart, and the heart of the world is a complete structure with face and hands and feet, etc. But the nail of the foot of the heart of the world, but the nail of the foot of the heart of the world, it is hardier in Yiddish, herziger than the heart of anything else. And the mountain with the stone and the spring stands at one end of the world. And this heart of the world stands at another end of the world, and the heart stands facing the spring, and hopes and yearns always very much that it should come to the spring, in very great yearning, and it cries out much to come to the spring, and also the spring longs for the heart, and the heart it has two weaknesses, one because the sun hunts it and burns it because it longs and wants to go and draw close to the spring, and the second weakness is because the heart is a great kind of yearning and longing, that it always longs and hopes and yearns so much that its soul goes out to go to the spring and cries out, etc. For it stands always facing the spring and cries out, nah, Gewalt, an exclamation in Yiddish like a ha, and yearns for it much as mentioned. But when the heart needs to rest a bit, that it should catch its breath a little, which they call upsappen. Then comes a big bird and spreads its wings over it and shields it from the sun, and then it has a little rest. And even then, during its rest, it looks also facing the spring and longs for it. But since it longs for it so much, why does it not go to the spring? Only when it wants to go and get close to the mountain, then it does not see the slope, and it cannot look at the spring. And if it does not look at the spring, then its soul will go out, for the root of its life is from the spring. And when it stands facing the mountain, then it sees the head of the slope of the mountain, where the spring stands. But as soon as it goes and draws close to the mountain, then the head of the slope disappears from its eyes, and this can be understood tangibly. And then it cannot see the spring, and then its soul would go out, God forbid. And if this heart would pass away, God forbid, then the whole world would be annulled, for the heart is the life of everything, and certainly nothing it can endure without a heart. Therefore it cannot go to the spring, it only stands facing it, and longs and cries out as mentioned, and this spring is timeless. For this spring is not within time at all, i.e., it has no day or hour in the world, for it is above worldly time. So how can it exist in the world? For in the world nothing can exist without a time. But all the time of the spring is only the heart. But all the time of the spring is only the heart, giving the spring a day as a gift. And when it comes time for the day to be finished and stopped, then when the day would end, the spring would have no time and would pass away, God forbid. And then the heart would pass away, God forbid. And the whole world would be annulled. It's mentioned above. So right before the end of the day, then they began to take permission from each other, which they call gezegenen, which wishes and blessings upon departing, and began to say wonderful riddles and songs, which they call lieder, to each other in great love and very, very great yearning. And the true man of kindness has supervision over this. And when the day reaches its very end to be finished and stopped, then this true man of kindness gives as a gift one day to the heart mentioned, and the heart gives the day to the spring. Then the spring has time again, and when this day goes from the place whence whence it comes. Then it goes also with very wonderful riddles and songs, which have in them all the wisdoms, and there are variations between the days, for there is a Sunday and Monday, etc. And also there are new moons and holidays. Each day comes with songs corresponding to that type of day, and all the time the true man of kindness have as it is all through me, i.e. the speech impaired one who is telling all this. For I go and collect all the kindness of truth, from which all the time comes to exist, as mentioned above, and therefore he was wiser even than the wise one mentioned above, who was wise like any day that he wished, for the whole root of time and the days now come to exist through him, i.e. through the speech impaired one who collects the kindnesses of truth from which the time comes, and brings them to the true man of kindness. And he gives a day to the heart, and the heart gives to the spring, through which the whole world is sustained, hence the root of the generation of time, which the riddles and the songs that have all the wisdoms in them, with the riddles and the songs that have all the wisdoms in them, is all through the speech impaired one. Hence I have consensus from the true man of kindness, that I can say riddles and songs that have all the wisdoms in them, for all the time with the riddles and songs come to exist through him, as mentioned. And now I give you as a full wedding present, that you be like me. In a very great celebration and gladness was made there Hilugiton, a term of joy, Hilugiton, a term of joy, for day nanach, nachma, meuman. When the celebration of that day ended, and they spent the night afterwards, in the morning the couple again remembered and were yearning, etc. After the beggar who had a crooked neck, in the midst of this, behold, he came and said, I am here, etc. At first I blessed you that you be like me, and now I give you as a wedding present that you be like me. You think that I have a crooked neck? My neck is not crooked at all. On the contrary, I have a very even neck, a very beautiful neck, just that there are vanity vapors, havolim in Hebrew, of the world, i.e. worldly foolishness, and I do not want to exhale any breath and spirit which they call duch into the vapors of the world, and because of this it seemed that his neck was crooked, for he crooks his neck, for he crooks his neck from the vapors of the world, and does not want to bring any vapor and spirits into the vapors of the world. But in truth I have a very beautiful neck, a very wonderful neck, for I have a very wonderful voice, and all kinds of voices that are in the world, which are sounds without speech. I can mimic all of them with my voice, for I have a very wonderful neck and voice, and I have consensus on this from that certain country, and I have consensus on this from that certain country. For there is a nation that is very strong in wisdom of melody, which they call musical, and all of them delve there in this wisdom, even little children. And there is not a child there that cannot play on some musical instruments, and the smallest that is that in that country. He is a great sage in another country in that wisdom of music, and the sages and the king of that country, and the capellas, groups, are extraordinarily great sages in that wisdom. One time the sages of that country sat, and each one was boasting of his music. One boasted that he could play on a certain musical instrument, and another boasted he could play on another musical instrument. One boasted on a musical instrument, and another boasted he could play several musical instruments. Another boasted he could play on all kinds of musical instruments. One boasted he could make with his voice like a certain musical instrument, and another boasted he could make with his voice like a certain musical instrument. Another boasted he could make with his voice like several musical instruments. One boasted he could make with his voice like an actual drum, which they call poik, like they were striking a timbrel. Another boasted he could make his voice as if they were shooting with firing tubes, which they call urmatis, artillery in Yiddish, and I was also there. Cannons. And I was also there. I answered and said to them, my voice is better than your voices, and this is the proof. For if you are such sages in voice of melody, then save the two lands, nanach, nachma, nachman, meuman. For there are two lands 8,000 miles apart from each other. And in these two countries, when night arrives, they cannot sleep. For when it becomes night, then everyone starts to yell out with wailing voices, men and women and children. If a stone were laid there, it would melt. For at night they hear a great voice of wailing, and because of this they all wail, men and children, etc. And so it goes in the two countries. For in this land they hear the voice of wailing, and everyone wails as mentioned above. And likewise in the other land it is likewise, and the two countries are 1,000 miles apart. And therefore, if you are such sages in melody, let me see if you can save those two countries, or if you can produce their exact sounds. They sound. They should produce exactly the sound of wailing that is heard there. And they said to him, the sages mentioned above said to this whose neck was crooked, will you lead us there? And he said, yes, I will lead you there. And they all started up to go there. And they went and came there, to one of the two countries mentioned above. And when they came there, when night arrived, it was as mentioned. And all of them were wailing much as mentioned. And also the sages mentioned above also were yelling. They saw they certainly could not help the lands. He said to them, the one with the crooked neck, said to the sages mentioned above, in any case, tell me, where does the sound of wailing come from that one hears? Where is the sound from, etc. They said to him, and you do know? He replied, I know, yes, for there are two birds, one male and one female, and they are just one pair in the world. The female was lost, he goes and seeks her, and she seeks him. And they were seeking each other very long, until they were lost, and they saw they could not find each other, and they stood still, and they made themselves nests. The male made him a nest, all close to one country of the two countries mentioned above, and not really near it, just that in the measure of bird voice it is near, for they can hear the voice of the male bird in that country from the place where he stood and made him a nest. And likewise she also made her a nest near the second country. Likewise that it was near in the sense they can hear her voice there as mentioned. And when night arrives, then this pair of birds begins each one, both of them, to wail in a very great voice of wailing. For each one wails for its mate as mentioned above. Nanach, nachman, nachman, meuman. And this is the voice of wailing that is heard in these two countries, because of which voice of wailing they all wail much, and cannot sleep. So did the crooked neck one tell all this. However, they did not want to believe this. They said to him, will you lead us there, to the birds? And he said, yes, I can lead you there, but only you cannot come there. For when you draw near to there, you will not be able to bear the voice of wailing, since even here you cannot stand it, and you will be forced likewise to wail as mentioned above. So when you arrive there, you will not be able to endure it at all. And in the day it is impossible to come there, for in the day it is impossible to bear the joy that is there. For in the day the birds gather by each one from the pair mentioned above, and they console and make happy each one from the pair mentioned above in very, very great joys. And they tell them words of consolation, that still it is possible that they find each other, until in the day it is impossible to bear the greatness of the joy that is there. And the voice of the birds that make them happy is not heard from afar, only when one arrives there. But the voice of the pair mentioned above that yell at night, it is heard from afar, therefore you cannot come there. And they said to him, the sages mentioned above said to this, whose nebevek was crooked, can you correct this? He replied, yes, I can correct this, for I can mimic all the sounds in the world. That all kinds of sounds in the world. He can emit them with his voice and make it exactly like any voice at all. Furthermore, I can throw voices, for I can throw a sound, that here in the place that I emit the sound will not be heard at all, only at a distance. would the sound be heard there, and therefore I can throw the voice of the female, that it should arrive close to the place of the male, and likewise throw the voice of the male, that it should arrive close to the place of the female, and draw them together thereby, and through all the aforementioned would be repaired, and through this all the aforementioned would be repaired. But who would believe this? And he went and led them into some forests. They heard as if someone were opening and closing a door and locking it with a bolt, which they call a klamke. And they heard the bolt slam shut, and shooting from a firing tube, which they call bix, a gun, and sending the dog to fetch the thing that he was firing, and the dog thrashing and grating himself into the snow. In Yiddish, gegrosnet in Schnee. All this the sages heard, and they looked around, and did not see a thing, and also did not hear from him. Ah, ye from the crooked naked one. Oh, any sound at all, and just that the crooked naked one was throwing such sounds, and therefore they heard these sounds. And so they saw that he can make all the sounds and make them exactly, and also throw sounds, and therefore he could repair everything mentioned above. And he did not tell more in this matter, and it is understood that he abbreviated here. Hence I have consensus from that country that my voice is very wonderful, and I can make all kinds of sounds that are in the world as mentioned above. Now I give you this as a full wedding present, that you be like me, and a very great happiness and much joy was made there. Oy nanach, nachma, nachma meuman. Oy nanach, meuman. Oy nanach, meuman.